that we're in right now. And Bobby, today we are going to talk about questions to ask on your college tour.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think everybody, knows they should go on a college visit, right? But they're not sure, what exactly they're supposed to do,
Well, that, and I
So
think
yeah.
too, you get there and, they kind of swoop you up and take you around all these great places
Mhm,
and tell you what they want you to know.
mhm,
And I think sometimes, this kind of is a job too. We're on a reconnaissance mission,
mhm.
right, to figure out if this is the right school. So, I think that we want to arm parents with, here are some of the things that you probably need to ask when you're on these college tours.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, especially because, if you go on the official tour, if you make an appointment with the admissions office or whatever, like on that tour, I think a lot of people don't realize that those tour guides will make some notes about, they're going to collect your name and info. You're registered. You got an appointment for that tour. They're going to make some notes about you. And if you are seeming uninterested, if you wander off, if you ask rude questions or just generally a jerk, they're going to note that. That'll go in your admissions file, right? So look engaged, look interested, and they will, if the, I remember when I gave tours at TCU, absolutely, I would come back and say, hey, these two students, these are going to be great students. They are super interested. They clearly, this is their top choice. We need to make sure we, recruit those students and get them to come here. That matters. And
It
so that's
does.
stuff.
And Bobby, not only that the parents are asking questions, but you may want to
Mhm.
arm your students with these questions as well so that they do, if it is a school that's important to them, that they look interested. And I'm glad you brought that up because,
Yeah.
as you've mentioned several times when we've had these discussions, like the admissions office kind of keeps a tally on every time you call in, every time you visit, all if you
Mhm.
visited the school of X, for your
Absolutely.
major, right? So do you want to
Yeah.
expand on that just a bit?
Well, absolutely. I mean, in the admissions process, there are lots of factors for admissions. And of course, GPA and class rank and test scores are part of it. But one of the things is just called demonstrated interest in attending because schools, part of their ranking from US News and all that is how many students that get accepted actually like attend, right? That's their conversion rate. And that is a really important statistic. And so they only want to accept people they know are going to come. And so, absolutely, if you go on the tour and the parent asks a lot of questions, you say, well, I know the parent is really interested, but you only know the student is interested if the student is asking questions, right? And so that's just a big part of it. And so, yeah, absolutely, they keep notes. Even if you go to a high school, like, college day at your high school, they're taking notes after you talk to them. They will grab an index card and write something down about you. So that's it. So just
Yep.
be aware. Always put your best foot forward. And
Yep.
they will
Good.
remember you.
It is good to know, and it is good to just take those few extra steps because you're already doing the
Mhm.
hard work,
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
there, right?
Well, let's talk
Absolutely.
about some of the questions that you and I, want to make sure that parents are not only asking, but being aware of when they're on
Mhm.
campus. And we've got two sections kind of that we want to talk about. And the first is that vibe.
Yeah.
There are definitely some tactical things that we want you to consider, but we think that the vibe is really important for you and for your student to really
Mhm.
know that it's going to be home, for the next 4 years.
Right.
So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the first step is just as you're walking around campus, keep an eye out for the students where they are and what they're doing, right? Uh, and I mean, some students would like to go to a college where you drive in from off campus, you attend a class, and then you leave and never talk to anyone. Some students want that, right? But most don't. Most want to make friends and be involved in activities and things like that, right?
right. And, I've seen to that point, I've seen some colleges. We've got one close by called UNT, University
Mhm.
of North Texas, that it is kind of a commuter school. The
Right.
weekends, you've got a lot less students on campus.
Mhm.
So that's something to be aware of for sure before you walk in. So that question, you do want to ask, what's the campus like on weekends? Because a lot of times you're going during the week when you see a lot of people walking around. So definitely ask that question.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, part of that is like, do students live on campus or is it a commuter school? But also, like, if you go to the student union building or wherever the cafeteria is or whatever it is, or if you go to the rec center, are there students just hanging out outside talking to each other, right? Do you see students out there doing things? Do students seem to be studying outside or in the library? Like, are they going there to study? Are they, as opposed to all just sort of, I don't know, hiding in their rooms and doing everything there, right? That's a big part of it, right?
It is. And let's not forget, go into the cafeterias and eat, find out which ones you can go into and definitely eat. And I got to tell you, Bobby, these college campuses these days are rocking it with the food.
Yeah. Last time I visited, I was a little like, man, all we had was hamburgers and, pizzas and,
well, you kind of got what you got. I mean, that day, if they had spaghetti or if they had meatloaf, that's what you got. You didn't have all these choices. But with that being said, still try the food, because if nothing else, it may get your student excited about the fact that they've got good food, and it's all important. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And, if they can say, like, I mean, literally, if you can go into that student union or whatever, and you can say, okay, I could see myself coming here and sitting down for a couple of hours and talking to people or whatever. Can you feel yourself sitting there and doing that? Because that's what most of your college experience is going to be, is being there on campus and doing things like that. Yeah. I think that's it. And just, ask questions, of course, ask the tour guide or whatever, what is student life like? How involved are people in activities? Is this one of those schools where lots of people are in Greek organizations like fraternities, or is most of the school more focused on other things, right? Like, those are all questions to ask, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's shift gears a little bit, but I do want to tell parents that if you're watching this live or if you're watching it later, I do have a download that you can that has a list of, I don't know, I've got probably 50 questions on here that you can ask on your college tour. Feel free to download this.
For sure. Bring that with you when you go on the tour, right? So you can be sure to not miss good questions that would be important to ask.
Yes. So now we've said that we were going to talk about the vibe, but we also wanted to talk about a little bit more tactical, on the tactical side, and some of the things that you should be asking regarding your career and major, the career center, the department, or the school that you want to major in. Let's shift gears on that a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, so generally most schools, part of their tour will be, we've just updated this building. We have this new lab, whatever, we have the new journalism lab, or we have the new whatever it is. And so you're going to get some information about that. And that's why you want to go and see, is the major I'm considering, is this the oldest building on campus that hasn't been updated, or does it have neat new stuff, right? That shows whether they are giving funding to that department. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if they're updating and staying with the times, it does matter.
Absolutely.
Another thing that I thought about, or I think one of the good questions to ask, is for the major that you're considering, what types of careers do people get after they take that major? And do you have a couple backup majors within that group or department that you can consider, so that if you walk into school and you aren't completely clear, which I don't think any student should be completely solid. Well, I shouldn't say that. You got about 5% of students that are going to be completely solid. I know what I want to do, right? So you've got to allow for some movement. Do they have a backup plan? Do they have other majors within that school or that department that you could transition to if you wanted to, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it doesn't, a lot of times, the tour isn't necessarily going to take you to the career center or the academic center necessarily. A lot of times the tour is just, here are the architectural spaces and here are the dorms and here are the, the rec center and all that. So you may want to seek that out on your own and just go in there and just say, okay, what do you do for students? That sort of thing. Tell me about this major. Tell me about how that works for your students. They'll be happy to do that,
Well, and let's talk about that, Bobby, because typically if you want to do that, you're best to set that up before you go on your tour.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. And by the way, that's an extra tick mark, right? On your, yeah.
Absolutely.
So if you have an idea of the school or department that you'd want to get into, definitely set up a separate time to go and visit those schools. And then, I hear a lot of parents asking this question as well. And that is, how easy is it to change your major? So, ask that question as well.
Oh, that's a really good question to ask. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how many students end up having to spend 5 or 6 years, at this school because they changed their major, right? And this is part of it too, is it's not just going on tours. Like, of course, during COVID, there has been some, changes about how this works, but universities will arrange for you to come sit in classes. You can come separately, and they'll let you come and sit in on class. They used to sometimes come and let you stay the night or whatever, right? But there are lots of different things. They could set up an appointment with you with the people in that department, right, of the major that you're interested in. So ask them about like what more you could do than just a tour, right? They can often do that. I mean, I've had students that were where the school actually even reimbursed travel expenses for them to come visit the school. That's a really neat thing, I think that maybe happens more with athletes than other people, but I've had non-athletes too that just a school is interesting them. I think Trinity University in San Antonio did that for a student, so there's lots of neat things that you can do. And I think that's part of the thing is you just have to ask. And I think a lot of people think, let's just go walk around, look at it, figure it all out ourselves. They are happy to answer questions. You just have to ask, right? There are so many resources available.
Bobby, and that's a really good point. And I want to point this out. They're in a business, right? So their job is to answer questions as you have them. And I can tell you for my clients, for us, when we were going through that with our kids, they were more than happy to answer that phone and answer your questions, because at the end of the day, it's a business and they want 100%. They want butts and seats,
Yeah,
they do.
Absolutely.
Now they want the right butts and seats, but they want them there. Yeah. So don't shy away from that.
Oh, absolutely. And that's interesting. I saw, the statistic that it turns out that this coming year, freshman enrollment is going to be the largest it's like ever been in colleges, because so many students deferred for COVID, reasons. And so you've got like almost a 30% bigger freshman class at a lot of schools this year. It's just going to be really fascinating to see how that, works out, because it's going to there might be some crowding, and that might be a question to be asking as well. Right.
Yeah.
It's like, are you going to be able to fit all these students,
That,
how are you dealing with that?
You've got housing issues that are attached to that, Bobby, because they only have so many dorm rooms.
Yeah.
And it would also make me wonder if it's okay. Like, I don't want to worry parents either if they're trying to get this bigger freshman class, possibly because they had less the year before. So are they going to have a hard time getting into classes and that kind of stuff? Is just a good question to ask. It may be a non-issue for that college, but just ask the question, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where you can get some good information from your tour guide, because your tour guide is generally a student. And if you ask questions like that, they may go off the script, right? And be like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm having trouble getting into all my classes. Then you find things out, right? But then you start hearing real, the real truth, the tea.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, one of the other things that I think that parents should explore and ask the right questions is, what type of career services or companies is that college attached to? And I'll give you a real no-brainer one, like the University of Arkansas. They're right in Walmart land, right? So they work closely with the school to, recruit students and that kind of stuff. Is there an opportunity within the school that you're looking at for the same type of opportunities within the community or within? Yeah, you know where I'm going.
That's really cool. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just have to ask that question, and they're gonna say, oh, we do all sorts of things, but you'll notice whether it's we are connected up with these companies and there are internships and we have lots of students doing that, or if they just say something generic well, we have an office that'll give you advice, right?
Or we do career fairs, or we do, you're right. It's on that particular question, definitely dig in a little bit and ask for specifics for sure.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, right, I mean, this is all just things to think about, right? Download that list that we're going to have, that's on your website, right? Download that list. And, the last point, you notice we kept saying, the major you're interested in. Before you do all this, you better go figure out what your strengths are and what possible majors you might be interested in, or you won't know what questions to ask, right? And that's what you help students with so much, is figuring out your strengths and therefore what majors might be good and what careers would work well for you, right? So if you haven't already done that, work with Kristen on that. Then the questions to ask, right? Then you'll know really good questions to ask.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And we will see you next week.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.